All right, so this talk is how to speak effectively, and it deals with putting together a reasonable presentation and how to present it. And I will tell you that the last two talks have been phenomenal. And this talk is not meant to offend anybody, but there are little things that we'll all recognize in ourselves because we're imperfect speakers. And as long as we're ourselves, I think we communicate most effectively. All right, and so I took some of this from Carnegie's course on public speaking. And that's where a lot of the information comes from, since he is a known expert and teaches people how to speak and to communicate effectively. So public speaking is a necessary skill, particularly in our profession. We need to communicate with each other, and we need to do presentations. We go to a lot of meetings, and we need to be able to transfer information that we know to other people. Unfortunately, most people don't speak effectively. We all have flaws when we speak. My biggest flaw is perhaps that I speak very quickly, particularly in non-English speaking countries. And that's been a major criticism of myself, as well as people that have listened to me speak. So I try to slow down. It's just not my personality and not the way that I do things. So I hope that I'm able to communicate effectively with all of it. It takes practice and time to develop the ability to speak. It's not something that you come right out of the box and do very well at. Some people are natural born gifted speakers. Others are not, and I put myself in that category. Anxiety prevents a lot of people from speaking effectively. They get nervous. They forget what they want to say. They don't communicate all the thoughts that they had in their mind because you don't write down every idea that you have on a slide. And so preparation can do a lot to overcome a lot of anxiety. And then there is an art to slide preparation. And I'll show you an example of a bad slide. And some of my slides may not be so good, and so it'll be important for you to pay attention and pick out what may not be an effective slide. But I'll give you some hints about what I've seen over the years, having done this for 20 some odd years, about what I have viewed as effective talks and presentations. All right, so Carnegie says that you talk about something that you've earned the right to talk about, and that's through long study or experience. We all speak about things that we do or things that we've learned through time, and try to communicate that to people that haven't had quite the experience that we've had. All right, talk about something that you know and that you know. All right, so be very well versed on the topic. In fact, know more about the topic than you're ever going to present to an audience. All right, don't prepare talks at the last minute. And this doesn't mean the physical preparation time. So for instance, this talk is something I started preparing 20 years ago because I thought about trying to be a reasonably good public speaker and how I can communicate with people. So physically, you can put a talk together pretty rapidly. You'll see that Doug and I are sitting over there this morning putting our talks together for this week. It's not that we haven't thought about what we wanted to say, it's just that we haven't had time to physically prepare. But we've been preparing for years to do the talks that we're doing currently. All right, talk about something that's aroused your interest. If you're not interested in a topic that you're speaking about, or asked to present something that you're not interested in, your lack of enthusiasm comes through during the presentation. And if you're bored with the topic, you can be certain that your audience is bored with the topic also. All right, so that gets down to talk to something that you have a deep desire to communicate to your listeners. It's easy in medicine, right? We want to pass along information, things that we know about, or present skills that we have that we can help people with. As has been said earlier, you don't need to make every mistake yourself. Learn from the mistakes of others. So the ineffective talks that people give are those that are memorized, sweated over, and made artificial. People go ahead and memorize a talk, and the delivery becomes sort of mundane, and the lack of enthusiasm of the talk comes through. You have to focus your talk to the appropriate audience. And Paula was saying that before, and so was Mehmet. You have to talk to people on the level that they should be talked to. You can't present a very technical talk to medical students, for instance, on a variety of topics. So you have to take the level down and present it in a similar manner. Perhaps talk slower, or perhaps say things that you wouldn't talk to a higher level audience. So to practicing neurosurgeons, if I talk to high level spine surgeons, my talk content will be significantly different than my talks to medical students. All right, slides that are overly complicated are distracting. You try to put enough information on the slide to pass along an idea. You don't put every word that you're going to say on a slide because you tend to read it then. And if you have too many pictures, the pictures become distracting and they tend to be small and you don't recognize what's trying to be demonstrated. And then poorly delivered talks, and we'll talk about sort of some of the issues that people do or say when they're not delivering a talk effectively. So when you talk, use examples. It helps to clarify a point. All right, so don't just read a slide and say something and not give a concrete example of what it is. Don't speak from a book. All right, so don't go and copy down a bunch of sentences from a text and just read them back. That's not effective. It doesn't help to round out the idea. It doesn't help to help people figure out what you're trying to communicate. I already told you, don't memorize a talk. You memorize a talk, it sounds rehearsed, it looks rehearsed, and it sort of evades some of your natural emotions when you're talking about something. You have to have a desire to pass along knowledge. All right, you have to want to communicate with people and really be enthusiastic about what you're trying to tell people. Talk based on your experience, and once again, that's something relatively easy in medicine because we all have a variety of experiences and we're easily able to share our own personal experiences as we speak. And once again, tailor the talk to the audience. You know, if you're talking, so you have to sort of tailor it and give it to the lowest level participant in your group, right? So if we're talking to medical students and residents and practicing physicians, the talk is going to be based and focused on a level that's appropriate for the medical students because it's as appropriate for them to learn what we're talking about and communicate to them. It makes it easier for everybody else to understand, and everybody's sort of working on the same level. So preparing and delivering a talk, and this gets down to how do you make your slides and how do you speak to people when you do it. So make brief notes of interesting things you want to mention. So don't write down everything. As you practice your talk, you'll think about things that you want to mention, but you don't necessarily put them on a slide. Don't write out your talks. And I've seen people early in their residency program sit down and write a talk out. And examples, which I've already told you to do. And then once again, know far more about a subject than you could possibly use. You should be the expert on it, and that allows you to answer questions and portray the expertise that you should have on it. Rehearse your talk. Don't stand up here and the first time you have gone through the talk is when you're standing here, right? And sometimes you have to rehearse it more. And remember that people have a lot of anxiety about public speaking, so the more you rehearse, the less anxious you become about delivering a presentation to an audience. All right, instead of worrying about your delivery, find ways of improving it. All right, and that goes without saying that you try to be better every time you give a talk. You've thought about it more. You've delivered and have some parts of it practiced, but you have to sort of maintain some of the spontaneity that you have in giving a discussion. All right, be yourself. Don't imitate others. I'm not going to talk like Mehmet talks. I'm not going to talk like Paulo talks. I'm going to talk like I talk. And I'm from the upper Midwest, so my talking style is probably a little bit more relaxed and less formal than most people. I tend to not be a very intimidating person. At least that's my impression. All right, so when you think about slides, all right, slide background should not be overly busy. If you look at my slide background, my slide background is basically basic blue. It identifies where I'm from for those that are interested. The colors are relatively easy on the eyes, and the words are relatively easy to read. So you have to make sure that your font size is big enough. Don't read your slides only. All right, so don't just read every word that's on the slide. Add something to it as you rehearse it. Think about something you want to add to it. Avoid overcrowding your thoughts. So don't put a million things on one slide, and I'll show you an example of a bad slide. Pictures are informative. Picture is worth 1,000 words, and hopefully you can think of at least 1,000 words to say about a picture when you look at it. It helps you to flesh out your ideas and to think about what you want to say. They're big enough to see and understand, and I'll show you that as an example. I've already told you about your colors, and words should be easily read on their background. So this is my example of what's probably not a very good slide, right? There's a lot of words on this slide. There's a lot of pictures on this slide. The color black, I just did that as an example of sort of a hard thing to read. You can hardly read the fact that it says transthoracic third rib as far as the approach goes. There's way too many pictures in this. They're too small. You can't get an idea of what people are talking about. So you either have words that are just based upon one picture and make this slide into maybe 4 or 5 slides. That might be a little bit better. The font size is probably a little bit too small overall, so that people in the back of the room will probably have problems looking at it. And in fact, the pictures are so small that you can't read the words that are on the pictures, so it's not very helpful. And you have no frame of reference as to where the pictures really are and what order the pictures go in. So that's my example of probably a slide that I would not use. So here are my random pearls that I've learned. And Doug is laughing because the first one is avoid humor, particularly in foreign lands, because humor is a cultural thing. Very funny. That's a joke, right? And this all goes back to a talk that someone was giving in Turkey and said something that I thought they were going to kill all of us for. And it was just sort of made as an offhanded comment. He said the joke, got no laughs for it, so then repeated the equally offensive joke louder. No one laughed, and it was a point of embarrassment. Avoid political and religious commentary. Right? We all have different religious beliefs and backgrounds. We all have a difference in our politics. And so you really have to know your audience before you bring those topics into a discussion. Your time limit. Well, we're all terrible at that, as evidenced by today and the fact that we're 2 hours late. If you've been to this before, the schedule is sort of a suggestion, and we've never really stuck to it. That's what happens when we do our big courses in Cleveland. We get through all the topics, and we're terrible about observing time, but try to be somewhere in the ballpark. You have to avoid certain words when you talk, and this sort of gets back to the language that's developed primarily in our youth these days. They use the word like a lot. They use the words you know a lot. I have one person I know that every other word is right. And the word and we're all guilty of using and It helps us to pause a second to think about what we want to say. But you should try to eliminate it as much as possible. All right? Don't talk down your audience. Try to communicate on their level. Hopefully you're talking to a group that's interested in what you're saying, and they're interested in hearing what you have to say. And if you don't know something, say you don't know it. There's no reason in BSing people. It does no one any good, and that leads to a passage of false information. All right, and so this is a quote from Satchel Paige, and I actually stole it. Ed Benzel presents this all the time. And it's not what you don't know that hurts you, it's what you know that just isn't so. All right, so that's for people that know something and they really know it, but in fact they're wrong. And saying it louder doesn't make it any more right. It's still wrong. Thanks for your time.